Morning, everybody, or I don't know, evening or night or whatever time of day you happen to be watching this video at. I wanted to do a little bit of content here about losing fat and gaining muscle mass at the same time. So, oftentimes, for example, when people say they want to gain muscle mass, what they actually mean is they want to be able to see their muscles more, right? So maybe they actually have some muscle mass right now, but they can't really see it because it's smoothed over by a layer of fat. So very often what happens to a lot of people is when they've lost fat, actually they can see their muscle mass more clearly anyway. So they have the perception that they've gained muscle mass, right? So very often when you think you gained muscle mass, you didn't, right? You actually can just see your muscle mass more effectively than you used to, or your muscles are sore from work at the previous day, so they're still a little bit swollen, they're more noticeable, or they feel firm and tight because you've been training them a lot more, so you tend to notice them more and you tend to perceive you have more of them, right? So perception and reality is a big problem with this kind of stuff. So that aside, right, who the heck's a good candidate for gaining muscle mass and losing body fat at the same time? Because a couple of people can do this, right? Like it is actually possible. It's just rare, right? Because most people don't fit these criteria. And some people that can do it are people who are brand new to training, right? So if you have never lifted weights in a progressive weight training program before, and by the way, a progressive program just means that there's some kind of a long-term plan and you're adding weight over time, right? So you don't just go to the gym every day and lift the same 8 kilo dumbbells for 3 sets of 10 that you've been lifting for 10 years. That would be a not progressive weight training program, and as such you don't see any progress with those. But if you're on a progressive weight training program for the first time in your life and you're training your entire body perhaps for the first time in your life, maybe you've never squatted heavy or deadlifted heavy before, it's basically impossible to stop you from gaining muscle mass, right? Because your muscles have just been sitting there, for the last couple of years going, my God, we're far too small, we prefer to be larger and stronger, but we've no opportunity to express that. And it's like, boom, here we go. So generally speaking, a total beginner who starts lifting weights for the first time, yeah, you can totally gain a little bit of muscle mass while losing body fat. That's a realistic target. A total beginner, by the way, is probably somebody within their first 6 weeks to like maybe 3 months of training, something around that kind of territory. So if you've been training for longer than 6 to 12 weeks, then you're probably going to need to pick a team, right? You're probably going to decide, okay, cool, this has been working really well for now, but now I'm going to have to decide I'm either getting on team fat loss while maintaining muscle mass, or team gain muscle mass while keeping fat gain to a minimum. Or else you join teams spinning your bloody wheels and getting hurt, by the way. So that's not a good team. Now, the second category of people that can generally lose fat while gaining muscle mass are people who just have an incredibly large amount of fat to lose, right? So if you are currently obese, if you have a waistline that's much greater than like 40 inches or what's that, 102 centimeters, let's pretend we're all metric over here. There's just so much bloody energy available in your body right now that, yeah, things like that can actually occur, right? So the main problem with losing fat and gaining muscle mass, right, is that they're opposite metabolic processes, right? So losing fat is a low energy situation, right? So it means reducing calorie intake, which means your body has to go find a bunch of resources from somewhere, right? And gaining muscle mass means you're putting energy into your body, right? Because you can't make something from nothing. Like you can't make a new muscle cell without supplying a lot of energy for your body to fuel that process. It doesn't work. So if you're in a gain muscle mass and lose fat scenario, that means you're trying to do less calories whilst also doing more calories. So how the hell do you do less calories and more calories at the same time? Well, there is one answer actually. You just have so ridiculously many calories available in your body that these processes can happen at the same time, or at least happen on average. A little bit of one with a little bit of the other over time. That works. Like people who are extremely overweight can actually usually gain a little bit of muscle mass while reducing their body fat. The less extremely overweight you are, the less that will happen though. So you got to be realistic about that. Okay. Third category of people that can usually gain muscle mass and lose fat at the same time are kind of a cheat. This is people who previously have had much more muscle mass. So if you used to lift a lot of weights and you used to be extremely strong, and then you've had a training break of like a couple of years and have actually lost a lot of that muscle mass, what happens is the basic scaffolding of those muscle cells are still there, right? They're called the myonuclei. So basically you could think about this as you still have the muscle cells, but they just shrunk, right? So somebody who has never had a lot of muscle mass has to effectively do two things to gain muscle mass. They have to build a whole new muscle cell and all the capillaries and all the fascia and all everything else that is needed for that cell. And then that cell has to be enlarged, right? Whereas if you've already got all the structure of the cell just sitting there dormant or shrunk perhaps, it'll actually grow very, very quickly compared to growing it from scratch, right? Because it's basically there anyway, it's just small. Versus growing a whole bunch of new muscle mass is a lot more energetically costly. So if you are, if you've taken a big training break, you used to be real strong and perhaps you're not so strong no more and you're going to get back into it, and you've also accumulated a bit of fat from somewhere, God knows where that came from, and you start training again, you start reducing your calorie intake, and you start lifting some weights again, you'll generally see both for a little while. Again, it's kind of like being a beginner all over again, right? You'll tend to see this work for about 6 to 12 weeks, and then you'll get back up to quite close to where your previous levels of muscularity were, and then it's time again to start picking a team. A fourth category of people who can gain muscle mass and lose fat at the same time are fucking liars, right? These are found all over the internet. They come in various forms. These are people who are taking a bunch of performance enhancing drugs and tell you they aren't. They're also people who just suck at maths and have not gone through any kind of process to measure how much muscle mass they had, how much fat they had, and are just looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, bro, I totally gained muscle mass and lost fat at the same time. Score. So maybe don't take that with a grain of salt, perhaps. Okay, so hopefully that's a relatively comprehensive review. So if you personally are setting out to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, if you fit into one of those four categories of people, good luck to you. Although if you're that fourth category, you probably, good luck to you in general. Talk to you later. But yeah, okay, so is this a realistic goal for you? Maybe. For most people, maybe not.